One of the concerns that the Argentinian writer Borges seems to be exploring in some of his short stories is non-conventional spaces, or spaces of understanding, spaces of conception or knowledge. And I think he's actually trying to explore more than one. I think there are several representations of that. In one of his short stories, probably one of his most well-known ones, called The Garden of Forking Paths, it's clearly a sort of hypertextual space, a linked space. It tells the story of a fictional book, but we never actually see the book, or we hear about it, but it's referred to this book. And the book is kind of endless. And it could be a book, or it could be a garden. We're not quite sure which. And both the book or the garden are sort of endless. But they're same, and they're forking, and it's often used as an example of a precursor to hypertextual writing, this mythical book. But although in a sense there's no authoritative reading of this book, it's a series of fragments that one can move through in any direction, much as a hypertext would be. There's still a sense in that this book is somehow limited. It has a limited number of pages. The garden has a limited number of paths through it. So whilst the reader has control over the paths that they may take, and those paths may be very, very large in number, both the book and the garden are not infinite in size. They are somehow bounded. There's some sort of limit to the extent of them. So in that particular short story, I think he's introducing a certain understanding of space, which is very familiar to us as what we might call Web 1.0, into the internet and hypertext writing more generally. There's this kind of Cartesian space, which is equivalent and equal in all directions. There's no centre to it, and everything is connected to everything else, kind of. In other stories, and I'm thinking particularly of the Library of Babel here, in a collection of short stories called Labyrinth, it's got a very different understanding of space. He tells the story of this library, and it's an infinite library. It contains all possible combinations of characters in all possible forms, all possible books. And whilst that seems to be imposing a limit, and possibly does impose a limit, it's a very different sort of limit. For a start off, there's a sense that, at least in the story, the characters in the story, the librarians in this strange library space, have this mythology that somewhere in this library there is a great round room, the central point of the library, and in that room there is a circular book. So even if it just exists as a myth within a story, there is this sense that the library has a kind of mythical centre. And also, one of the features of this library is that it has these great galleries which run up and down its vast, hundreds and hundreds of miles high galleries, with railings around the side to stop the librarians falling off between the stacks. But of course, occasionally they do fall off, or if a librarian dies, his body is thrown over the balcony and falls forever between the shelves and desiccates in the air until it's just a fine film of dust falling into the future. So in the sense, there is a kind of a horizon in Borges, but it's a horizon that's always one step away. It's not. It's both present and mythical simultaneously. The horizon is always just behind you, or just to one side of you. It reminds me a little bit of the statement by Pascal writing about Newton, in which Pascal described Newtonian space somewhat in horror, I think, as a sphere, the centre of which is everywhere and the periphery of which, no, I beg your pardon. Yes, the centre of which is everywhere and the periphery of which is nowhere. In the Borgesian sense, in terms of the story in Labyrinth, the Library of Babel, the centre is kind of everywhere. It exists as a myth within the minds of the occupants of this strange library. And the horizon, as opposed to the periphery, is also everywhere. Or perhaps it reverses out completely, and the periphery, the horizon, the balconies are everywhere. The opportunity to fall off the edge of knowledge is everywhere presented, and the centre, being mythical, is really nowhere.